A male college student went to meet his online love only to find 3 handsome guys waiting. Surprisingly, these attractive men turned out to be 3 adorable girls. Tokiwa and his 2 friends, Asagi and Hagi, arrived at the mixer full of anticipation. It was their first mixer, and they were invited by Suo, a classmate from a discussion group. The 3 girls had already arrived, but to Tokiwa's group, the seats were occupied by 3 good-looking guys. Tokiwa quickly called Suo to ask about the situation. Suo had already seen them and came over to greet them, chiding them for being late. She explained that they were dressed as men because they had just finished working at a cross-dressing bar and didn't have time to change. Tokiwa and his friends accepted the explanation and stayed. Suo suggested playing the king game to ease everyone's nerves and deepen connections. The person who drew the king could choose 2 numbers to kiss. The first king, Asagi, picked numbers 2 and 5, which were Suo and Kohaku. Both girls kissed without hesitation. Hagi felt something was off, questioning why they were watching handsome guys kiss. However, his confusion escalated when it was his turn to be king. He ended up choosing Tokiwa, and Suo, still proactive, pondered where to kiss on Tokiwa's handsome face. Tokiwa couldn't keep calm, reminding himself they were girls, but that only excited him more, causing him to freeze up. Halfway through the mixer, the 3 guys couldn't take it anymore and tried to leave, but 2 followed them, luckily pulled away by Kohaku. Meanwhile, Suo appeared to be up to no good, preparing more gifts for them. Tokiwa's friends, now in the mood, began discussing which girl they liked. Hagi found it hard to choose among the 3 handsome girls. Then, Tokiwa received a message from Suo apologizing for their attire at the mixer and included a photo of the 3 girls in their usual feminine dresses, instantly capturing the hearts of the 3 college guys. They were reminded that although the girls looked like handsome men, they were indeed cute girls inside. This revitalized their spirits. Returning to the mixer, they saw Suo and Kohaku acting flirtatiously, with Tabizi taking photos. It was hard to imagine them as the cute girls from the photo. Suo then asked how late Tokiwa and his friends could stay and invited them to continue at karaoke. As they approached the reception, the 3 girls dazzled the receptionist. Suo then proposed a singing contest with penalties for the lowest scores. Unbeknownst to her, Tokiwa was an excellent singer and readily accepted the challenge. If he won, Suo and her 2 friends had to change back into women's clothing. The 3 had no objections. Thus, Tokiwa performed at his best, singing to a near-perfect score of 99. He thought he had secured a win, but to everyone's surprise, Suo scored a perfect 100, astounding everyone present with her performance. Consequently, Tokiwa had to accept a penalty. When the waiter came in with snacks, he saw a group of men surrounding a female high school student, which seemed a bit odd. But then the student revealed himself to be a man, reassuring the waiter. Tokiwa, embarrassed to be seen like this, was teased by Suo, who remarked that the staff were used to such sights, and she was happy to play along with Tokiwa. Their interaction inspired To, who saw the potential for a new comic theme about a prince-like handsome man and a pitiful young man meeting at karaoke, a typical setting for boys' love stories. To also needed photos for her publication and started making Kohaku pose in various embarrassing ways, but Kohaku was reluctant to continue modeling for her. Asagi, however, was interested, so Kohaku sacrificed himself to save Asagi by casually grabbing a drink, which Hagi then reminded him was his, resulting in an indirect kiss that seemed to deeply affect Kohaku, much to Hagi's amusement, though he wondered why he would be moved by a man in disguise. The next moment, seeing Kohaku's shy expression made Hagi's heart flutter, realizing his feelings might be changing. After leaving the karaoke, To suggested visiting a game center, which everyone agreed to. At the claw machine, To grabbed a figurine on her first try, teaching Asagi how to use the machine while embracing him from behind to guide him. Asagi was thrilled when he finally grabbed a figurine, while To found their pose highly inspirational and had Kohaku take a photo. Hagi, trying to ease the awkwardness with Kohaku, accidentally won a cute doll from the machine, which he self-consciously offered to Kohaku, regretting it as he thought a handsome man wouldn't like such a doll. Surprisingly, Kohaku seemed to actually like it, but wouldn't admit it, revealing his tsundere nature. The atmosphere between them was just right. Suddenly, Asagi mentioned he was hungry. Meanwhile, Tokiwa noticed Suo staring at something. She wanted to take photo booth pictures, but a sign prohibited men from entering alone due to her male attire, which might trouble other customers. Tokiwa suggested using a smartphone instead, which Suo misinterpreted as an invitation to take photos together, pulling Tokiwa in for a selfie and wrapping her arms around him. Unable to contain his smile, Tokiwa was caught off guard. To continued to take pictures for her material and blocked Asagi from interrupting the couple. They then continued their evening at a noodle shop. The next morning, Hagi and Asagi didn't show up for class. Suo was also absent. Just as Tokiwa was about to enjoy a quiet day, Suo appeared dressed as a man, acting very friendly toward him. Two girls behind them were visibly enamored, their eyes filled with hearts. To avoid the situation, Tokiwa resorted to frantically sending memes to his friends, but received no responses. Then, Suo brought up the fun she had the previous day. Tokiwa took the chance to ask why she had invited him to the gathering, but Suo dodged the question. Just then, the teacher arrived for the lesson, and Tokiwa realized he had forgotten his handouts. Suo quickly lent hers to him, making it difficult for him to concentrate. When Suo went to submit an assignment, the two girls immediately questioned Tokiwa about his relationship with the prince, a mysterious, handsome figure who had suddenly appeared at school. No one knew which department he was from, and everything about him was shrouded in mystery. The girls eagerly sought details about Suo from Tokiwa. When Suo returned, she saw Tokiwa chatting happily with the girls and joined in, deliberately letting others misunderstand her relationship with him, fueling the girls' fujoshi spirits. After class, Hagi and Asagi arrived to find Suo and Tokiwa hand in hand, mistakenly thinking they were a couple. Tokiwa didn't elaborate much, but asked if they had heard of the prince. It turns out that person was Suo. Hagi was shocked, as this was even more dramatic than the rumors suggested. As the next class was about to start, Suo purposely showed off her phone's screensaver, which was a selfie with Tokiwa from the day before. After the last mixer, Tu was so enchanted by Asagi that she asked him out again to model just for her. Tokiwa and Hagi were somewhat worried, so they secretly followed the two when they met. Given Asagi's naive nature, he'd help count the cash even if he were being conned. Asagi was excited, asking to what he should pose for. Tu grabbed his hand and took several photos of it for her manga reference. Upon hearing Tu was a manga artist, Asagi excitedly inquired about the genre. Tu tactfully indicated it was a romance story set in a battle manga, which thrilled Asagi even more, imagining his hands featured in action-packed poses. Tu, not wanting to burst his bubble, just nodded along. Then she tied Asagi's hands with a tie, pulled them above his head, and pushed down for another photo angle. Kohaku walked in on this scene, discovered Tokiwa and Hagi hiding, and knew what To's manga involved. While helping Asagi untie, she told him he could refuse if uncomfortable, but Asagi seemed far from disliking it, even hoping Tu would ask him again. As a thank you, he wanted to see To's manga, which Kohaku immediately vetoed since it was adult only. After the mixer, Tokiwa and Asagi both made significant progress with the girls they met, leaving Hagi alone and possibly disliked by Kohaku. Drowning his sorrows with alcohol, Hagi coincidentally met Kohaku on the street, still in men's clothing, delivering a forgotten item to a client. Just then, a thunderstorm started, and Hagi quickly pulled her under shelter. Noticing Kohaku's wet shirt, he offered his jacket, feeling flustered. Kohaku wore his jacket, making Hagi question his orientation as he felt unexpectedly attracted, telling himself he wasn't swooning over a handsome guy. Just then, the store manager offered them an umbrella, and they left together under the small umbrella, shoulders touching, with Hagi's heart racing again. They reached Kohaku's workplace, and she invited Hagi in, but he fled, questioning his sexual orientation, after realizing he had tilted the umbrella to keep her dry. Suo invited Tokiwa, Hagi, and Asagi to a cross-dressing bar, which intrigued Asagi, but Hagi was apprehensive about his feelings upon seeing Kohaku. At the bar entrance, Tokiwa hesitated to enter, until Suo appeared behind them, and opened the door to a new world for them. Several handsome women welcomed them unanimously, and with great enthusiasm. At Suo's recommendation, Asagi ordered a special cocktail mixed by To. The drink featured a red top and a yellow bottom, representing To's favorite pairing colors. She explained to Asagi that red represented the dominant role and yellow the submissive. which Asagi didn't understand but enjoyed nonetheless. Tokiwa couldn't help but remark how different this place was from the maid cafe he once visited with Hagi, where they ordered omelet rice. When Suo heard this, she ordered omelet rice for Tokiwa too, and showed him how to squirt ketchup around it, their faces coming dangerously close as their fingers intertwined. Suo then struck a flirty pose and asked Tokiwa who made his heart flutter more, her or the maid. Tokiwa blurted out Suo's name, while Asagi continued to enjoy his cocktail, remarking on how good it was. As the place got busier, Tokiwa wanted to quickly finish his meal and leave, but felt awkward eating with Suo watching. Just as Suo was about to feed him, she was called to serve another table. Asagi then called Kohaku over to join them. However, Kohaku was completely different, embodying a domineering CEO persona, implying that guests should serve the staff instead. Seeing that Tokiwa and others had finished their meals, she got up to order more and casually tousled Tokiwa's hair, which too criticized, saying a domineering CEO wouldn't do that to a man she just met. Kohaku was speechless and felt the persona didn't suit her, but too coached her thoroughly. Noticing Hagi wasn't there, she casually asked about it, and Asagi honestly mentioned Hagi didn't want to come, so she couldn't return his coat just yet. Despite needing to maintain her persona, Kohaku tried to show a kind expression and asked Asagi and Tokiwa to tell Hagi, "I will definitely return what I owe him." This earned To's approval but confused the others, wondering if Hagi had wronged Kohaku in some way. During a break, Kohaku again expressed how unsuitable she felt portraying a domineering CEO, although the guests seemed to like it. Her colleagues then suggested trying other personas, but only 3 were left: a seductive big brother, a Chunabu, and a yandere. Kohaku immediately dismissed the seductive role, was confused by Chunabu, which to demonstrated without clarity, and knew yandere had been popular when Suo performed it, but were too intense. Ultimately, Kohaku had to continue as the domineering CEO, but Tu offered her manga for reference and suggested she might try the seductive role if nothing else worked. Kohaku suddenly asked Hagi to meet, and Hagi panicked instantly. He quickly sought advice from his close friends. Recalling what Kohaku had said before, Tokiwa and Asagi couldn't help but worry for Hagi, making Hagi even more anxious. It turned out the meeting was to get a scolding, and he felt he couldn't refuse. With trepidation, Hagi showed up at the arranged spot, and Kohaku spotted him early. Upon entering the shop, Hagi immediately apologized, confusing Kohaku. She just wanted to return his coat. Hearing that Tokiwa and Asagi had influenced Hagi, she explained she was just following the domineering CEO role. Today, she wanted to return his jacket. Hagi then relaxed, and he couldn't help but be taken by the sweet scent from the cloves. This was when a waitress came over to take their order, noting the shop's specialty was a fruit parfait, but Kohaku ordered just coffee. Hagi wanted to try the parfait, but Kohaku dismissed the idea, arguing it would look odd as she was dressed as a man. Hagi was shocked, never considering this before, believing that enjoying food had nothing to do with gender. Kohaku recalled being judged by girls for liking sweets while in male attire, which had made her cautious. Hagi had never been aware of this, thinking Kohaku either disliked sweets or her persona prevented it. Left with no choice, Kohaku admitted she indeed loved sweets, striking a chord with Hagi. Both ordered a fruit parfait, and it looked delicious. Kohaku showed a genuine smile, almost overwhelming Hagi. No doubts remained. He truly had feelings for her. That evening, Kohaku went to work at the cross-dressing bar, finding Tu exhausted from working on a fanzine. Dissatisfied with her earlier drafts, she had scrapped them 2 days ago to redraw them, with the print deadline the next morning. Tu was about to leave work to finish the drafts, and no one else was available to help. Tu then called Asagi, who became the first of the trio to enter the scene, thinking he was to model but ended up helping with the comic. Tu handed him a stack of drafts to fill in blacks and apply screen tones. Though not modeling, Asagi found drawing comics fun and gladly helped. Then Suo called, inquiring if Tu had found help. Tu mentioned Asagi, prompting immediate worry from both, considering the fanzine was adult only. Realizing Asagi might be shocked and flee, Tu quickly took back the drafts from him, selecting less explicit ones. As Asagi began working, he was puzzled, noticing the recurring red faces, mistaking the story for caring for a sick friend. Remembering, Tu said she drew battle manga, Asagi curiously peeked over to see if she was sketching a fight scene. Instantly, To covered his eyes, claiming it was to protect him from being traumatized. Yet, Asagi caught a glimpse and remarked it was more of a close combat. To was relieved by Asagi's naive reaction. After pulling an all-nighter, they managed to submit the drafts just before the deadline, all thanks to Asagi's help. Including last night, To had been up for 3 days straight and was unsteady while paying Asagi for his work. Concerned, Asagi pushed her onto the bed, coincidentally mimicking a pose from the manga. Asagi even recited a line from the manga, "Don't move," before adjusting To's shoulders and leaving, but To was panicked. The pages Asagi helped blacken had no dialogues, so why did he know the lines? Perhaps he had seen more of the plot than expected. Worrisome, given the mature content. Worried Asagi might not return to help, To went out to explain, only to be pushed back onto the bed by Asagi, who applied a hot towel and tucked her in, promising to take care of her like the characters in her manga. Eventually, they both fell asleep. Now, both To and Asagi, as well as Kohaku and Hagi, had made significant progress. Suo couldn't fall behind. Meanwhile, Tokiwa went to copy her homework, but couldn't find anyone because Suo was in drag, which Tokiwa found unusual. Upon realizing again that Suo was indeed a girl, Suo handed over her homework. However, Tokiwa couldn't concentrate, distracted by how pretty Suo looked in drag. To thank her, Tokiwa thought of giving a gift, and Suo seized the moment to invite him for a drink alone, since she was off work. They went to a bar where Suo switched to male attire and whispered to Tokiwa, asking if he preferred her in drag. Determined to make Suo happy, Tokiwa noticed 2 girls from before, eyeing him with displeasure, wondering why he could be alone with the prince. Jealousy distorted their faces, and they were tempted to berate Tokiwa. Seeing Suo smile at Tokiwa, they could only assume they were close friends, recalling the prince previously saying they were just friends. Could there be more to their relationship? Drunk from Suo's continuous toasts, Tokiwa said he felt sleepy. Suo pulled him close, letting him rest on her lap. Though he knew he should refuse, his muddled mind allowed Suo to fool him into falling asleep. Unresponsive to Suo poking his face, a perfect chance for Suo to lean down and kiss him, seen clearly by the 2 girls. Now their relationship was surely more than just friends. Tokiwa and his 5 friends planned a trip to the zoo. After 3 male university students arrived at the meeting point, the 3 girls were nowhere to be seen. Just then, a car pulled up behind them. Asagi was suddenly pulled into the car. This story actually began a few days earlier. After leaving To's house, Asagi couldn't wait to share his experience with his friends, mentioning that he had to lie down to sleep. Tokiwa and Hagi were shocked. Things were moving so fast between them. Meanwhile, Hagi was still figuring out his sexuality, but he had also gone for ice cream with Kohaku. Tokiwa mentioned he had drinks with Suo a few days ago. Suo then arrived, thanked Asagi for helping To, and learned about Hagi's trip to the dessert shop with Kohaku. It seemed everyone was getting along well, so she suggested they all go out together that weekend. Tokiwa and the others were looking forward to seeing Suo and the other girls in women's clothes, but they were destined to be disappointed. The person who pulled Asagi into the car was To, and Asagi was cozily nestled in To's arms, looking very dainty. Suo, who was driving, insisted in a tone that brooked no argument that Tokiwa sit in the passenger seat. Tokiwa, slightly disappointed he couldn't see Suo in women's clothes, couldn't refuse. However, Suo in men's clothes was unexpectedly handsome. Noticing Tokiwa's gaze, Suo reached over to help him with the seatbelt, leaving Tokiwa utterly charmed. Despite driving, Suo was exceedingly considerate to Tokiwa, making him feel pampered like a prince. The thought of spending the whole day together was almost too much for Tokiwa. To and Asagi then expressed a desire to stop at a nearby rest area, so Suo decided to take a detour, noting that Tokiwa seemed tired. Little did they know, the most exhausting part was yet to come. Upon arriving, Suo suddenly leaned over Tokiwa and smoothly parked the car, completely bewitching him. Tokiwa insisted on switching seats with Hagi for the rest of the journey, as he couldn't handle being flirted with much more. The 6 finally arrived at the zoo. Suo and the other 2 girls went ahead to buy tickets, instantly capturing the hearts of the nearby girls. Tokiwa and his group felt mixed emotions. Why go to the zoo with such handsome guys? It seemed so out of place, but actually, Suo was mainly interested in seeing the baby pandas. Thinking the other 3 didn't like this, she looked visibly upset. Frightened, the 3 guys quickly explained they had no objections. making Suo instantly smile again. Everyone had different preferences for what they wanted to see, so Suo suggested visiting her favorite spots first and regrouping at noon. She then grabbed Tokiwa's wrist and led him away. Tu also took Asagi with him, leaving Kohaku and Hagi to pair up by default. Hagi was equally nervous, fearing he might fall for Kohaku in men's clothes, which would indeed confirm his doubts about his sexuality. Kohaku wanted to see the guinea pigs, so Hagi followed him there. Seeing the adorable guinea pigs, Kohaku's eyes sparkled. The keeper told visitors they could hold them, and she picked one up. It was so cute that Hagi couldn't bear to look, feeling emotionally stirred. However, he quickly convinced himself that finding Kohaku cute might just be a synergistic effect due to the cute surroundings. Then, turning back, he heard Kohaku remark that the guinea pig resembled Mr. Hagi. At that moment, Hagi's brain stopped working, and he blurted out, "How cute," while looking at Kohaku's face. Kohaku agreed, saying the guinea pig was indeed cute. Hagi quickly clarified he meant the guinea pig, not realizing Kohaku had almost misunderstood since he was looking at her face when he complimented. The real misunderstanding arose then. Kohaku gently stroked the guinea pig in her arms, and Hagi grew increasingly annoyed. Why did the guinea pig have such a sly, human-like expression? On the other side, Tu took Asagi to see various cockroaches. Asagi screamed in fright, while Tu watched with fascination, almost unable to stop, unable to handle the cockroaches. Asagi hugged Tu from behind and buried her face in his broad shoulders, insisting she was fine and that Tu could continue if he wanted. This reminded Tu of a trembling Pomeranian, evoking a sense of guilt, so he decided to leave with Asagi. However, halfway through, a huge spider caught their attention, and Tu immediately approached it. Thinking they were already outside, Asagi looked up and found herself face to face with the spider, screaming on the spot. Tokiwa, in another area, almost heard her scream, but was quickly distracted by Suo, whose princely charm irresistibly drew the girls around him, causing a crowd outside the tiger enclosure. Suo seemed to enjoy the majestic tigers and expressed a desire to be as imposing as them. Tokiwa couldn't help but imagine Suo fitting perfectly with the tigers. As noon approached, Suo took Tokiwa's hand to meet up with the others. A little girl staring blankly at them called out, "Prince!" upon seeing Suo's face. She had been separated from her family and couldn't find them despite searching for a long time. Suo took her hand, reassuring her that she had done well and would now take her to a place where they could find her father. The girl clung to Suo and wouldn't let go. Tokiwa and Suo then took her to the Lost Children's Service Center and called the others to explain the situation. It seemed they couldn't join them at the panda viewing. Tokiwa told them to go ahead, while Suo suggested Tokiwa could also leave, as she could manage alone. But how could Tokiwa possibly leave Suo there by herself? Suddenly, Tokiwa realized that visiting the pandas was Suo's idea. Although she said it was okay, her radiant aura had faded. Tokiwa noticed she might be feeling down. Spotting a discarded box a staff member was pulling, Tokiwa quickly greeted Suo and followed. The box contained discarded panda headgear. Tokiwa also made a quick stop at the souvenir shop and returned wearing the headgear. He was out of breath from running and took a moment to catch his breath before he could speak. He then gave Suo the tiger and panda keychains he had bought. This spontaneous display of boyfriend-like effort really touched Suo's heart. As Tokiwa explained non-stop, Suo couldn't take her eyes off him, admiringly saying she really liked him, though it was unclear if she meant the keychains or Tokiwa himself. Just then, the little girl woke up and asked if Tokiwa and Suo were dating, but neither of them answered. Upon seeing the panda head, Tokiwa remembered to return the headgear. The girl's father arrived after hearing a broadcast and expressed his deep gratitude to Tokiwa and Suo. The two then went to meet up with the others. Asagi had sent them photos, and Kohaku expressed sympathy for Suo, who responded that she had indeed seen the pandas. Back at school, Suo kept showing off the two keychains everywhere. Tu invited Asagi to meet at a doujinshi convention. It was Asagi's first time attending such an event, and he was dazzled upon arrival. Besides the various cosplayers, many people were selling their doujinshi and merchandise. Tu had also brought his own doujinshi comics and sent Asagi a location to meet up. Unfortunately, Asagi couldn't understand it and was about to ask someone for directions when Tu grabbed his face, having come to find him personally. Within a few steps, Asagi was distracted by some dolls and Tu had to pull him along to avoid losing each other in the crowd, to even put a collar on him. Meanwhile, since there was no one at the booth, readers waiting to buy the books gathered around. When they turned and saw the booth owner leading someone by the collar, their eyes lit up. They wondered why a handsome guy would lead another man like that in public. Was it some kind of play? However, Asagi was oblivious and even planned to buy a book to support To's business. Remembering Kohaku's warning that uninitiated people might be traumatized by certain images, To misled Asagi by saying the items were only for those with special training. Asagi obediently put down the book while the Fujoshi nearby enjoyed the scene even more. To made space for Asagi to come in and help at the booth. Unexpectedly, someone messaged her. It was Miss Circle, saying she had saved a copy of the new issue for her. Excited, To left Asagi alone at the booth and rushed to Miss Circle's booth to get her new issue, leaving in a flurry of anticipation. Meanwhile, Asagi managed the booth well, though he didn't quite understand what To had drawn. He was happy to help and felt good about it. Just then, To's female fans arrived and were surprised to see a man at the booth. Asagi quickly explained that he was just helping out and that Teacher 2 had stepped away momentarily. Fans hurried to buy a new issue and eagerly explained to Asagi just how talented Teacher 2 is. They praised To's sensitive emotional depictions and powerful battle scenes. As they were about to touch on more sensitive content, they realized they were speaking to a man and quickly stopped talking. However, Asagi didn't mind at all. He was actually pleased that she liked To's work so much. The fan, overly nervous, feared she might say something disrespectful when meeting To later and asked Asagi to pass on a gift for her. When Asagi declined, advising her to wait and give it to To personally, the fan was surprised, but stayed. Asagi knew how serious To was about her work and wanted her to hear the fan's thoughts directly. Just as they were talking, To returned. The fan, stunned by To's attractiveness, couldn't speak and thrust the gift into To's arms before fleeing. To appreciated her sentiment, and the interaction between her and Asagi inspired the Fujoshi nearby to use it as reference material. After the event, as Asagi waited for To pack up, he saw that everyone had been successful. To his surprise, To had changed back into women's clothes, even in women's attire, To still exuded a boyfriend's charm, and they celebrated with a barbecue that night. Asagi took photos and shared them with his brothers. Hagi immediately noticed a girl opposite Asagi and quickly inquired about it. The next morning, Suo received a call from Kohaku, who couldn't reach To and was due to take over. Suo stopped by To's house, where Asagi answered the door and went to wake To. Suo teased them, asking if something had happened last night. Asagi shared that after the doujinshi event, they went for barbecue and continued drinking beer at home because the drinks at the restaurant weren't enough. They ended up drunk. Suo was skeptical that it was just that simple and discreetly asked To if they really just fell asleep after drinking. To confess that she had woken up in the middle of the night a bit excited and took many photos of Asagi while he slept. Asagi, upon hearing this, was a bit shy but surprisingly not angry. To was already changing clothes to go to the bar and asked Asagi if he was free later. While talking, she pulled on the drawstring of his hoodie and invited him to have lunch together at the bar later. Asagi eagerly nodded in agreement. Then, To gave Suo something before they went to the bar. There, Asagi soon enjoyed a special omelet rice made by To. Perhaps charmed by his cuteness, To suddenly leaned in and asked him to feed her a bite. Asagi obediently did so, but To thought there wasn't enough cream. Noticing tomato sauce on the corner of Asagi's mouth, she wiped it off for him. Suo found this amusing, while Kohaku was speechless, feeling like the distance between them had suddenly closed. At that moment, Asagi received a call from Hagi, who questioned why he hadn't replied to his messages the previous night and who the beautiful woman was that he went to the barbecue with. As Asagi ate his omelet rice, he explained it was Miss To. Hearing this, Hagi was even more taken aback. Knowing Asagi was currently at the men's bar with Suo and Kohaku, Hagi fell silent. So Suo texted Tokiwa, inviting him and Hagi to join them for omelet rice. Unfortunately, Hagi didn't come, but having Tokiwa there was enough for Suo. She showed everyone the Tokiwa doll To had made for her and told Tokiwa not to mind it. Then she changed the subject, suggesting they play a game of You Lose If You're Shy. To and Asagi demonstrated first. It started as a normal game, but then To began to flirt heavily with Asagi. Tokiwa, watching, was sweating profusely, realizing ordinary people stood no chance. So when it was Suo and Tokiwa's turn, Tokiwa, aware of Suo's prowess, promptly surrendered. Suo playfully teased him with the Tokiwa doll. Suddenly curious, Tokiwa wondered what she would do with the doll. He feared she might use it to vent her frustrations, but Suo said it was for unspeakable acts, keeping the specifics a secret.